take you to that sheet right now. And just want to bring you back up to speed from what I talked about earlier, is that if you recall that the mission statement and the guiding principles that are in this draft statement have been developed from our work so far with our 3 listenings. And the mission has many components to it. So you're seeing a couple of components here of the mission. You're seeing the mission statement and the guiding principles, which encompasses our core values, our core beliefs, and our core principles. So what I wanted to go over here, this mission statement being a draft, is seeing what we can infer from it at this point in time. And how we're using our mission to make decisions about programming. And the whole thing is that we want to do missional thinking. And that is that we want to start with our mission first to make decisions. And from that mission, then we determine our programming and resources that are needed to support that mission. And then by doing so, we're starting with God and what God is calling us to do, and not the other way around. So often in our thinking and our decision making, we kind of go backwards. We go from what our building can do. So if our building can do so much, then maybe it can only support so much programming. And so by the programming it could support, that's going to be our mission. But that's backwards, and that's limiting God's potential. So we want to go forwards. But let me make an example of how that's backwards. If we start with the building first, let's say we talk about air conditioning, and we want to talk about then programs that we can do. We can only do programs then if we don't have air conditioning, then it limits our programming to 9 months out of the year, say. So then our mission then is limited to just 9 months out of the year. But if we do it the other way and we use missional thinking, and we start with God first, then God's determining what we need. And then we determine our programming based on what God is telling us to do. And then we make our resources and our buildings support that. So that's missional thinking. But let's look at the mission statement as it is in a draft form. And it says right now, St. Mark's mission is to be God's grace in action. So what does that tell us about programming? It tells us we want to focus on grace. Grace is something essential that we think is important. So we want to share the message of God's saving grace, and God's grace is for everyone. So this is a message that we want to use to bring people in. And then as an evangelism tool, we want to connect to those people who may be disconnected from God in our community to our church. And we also want to connect members of our church in meaningful and Christ-centered relationships. And we've talked about this before when I was doing my other talk we talked a lot about small groups. A means to keep people in. And then using the Holy Spirit to keep us connected to God and to each other 7 days a week, giving us that spiritual energy to keep going 7 days a week. So now if we're doing missional thinking, we're talking about programming that is 7 days a week, supported by the Holy Spirit and connecting us to each other all the time, which is a little bit different if we go the other way around, that we're limiting us to 9 months a year. Another important word in our mission statement as it is in draft form, and it could change, but like I said, we're using this for inference right now, action. We want to be a church of action. We want to have programs that are serving, that are helping those who are disconnected, and connecting to God's message of love and grace. And we've talked a lot just recently about needs in our community. We talked about needs for the youth, the elderly, families, a lot of different things where people are disconnected and ways we might be able to serve those disconnected people. And again, we also talked about earlier about small groups connecting us to each other. So these are all action-oriented programming that we want to do. So we want to have programming that's grace-oriented, action-oriented, 7 days a week, full of energy, full of the Holy Spirit. This is kind of what our mission is leading us to. Now if you go to the next step, that's when we go to the building. So we want a building that can support programs that are action-oriented and support our mission. So we need a building that's welcoming, that has heat, air conditioning, ADA friendly, so that these people who are that are disconnected can come and be connected to God. We also need a building that supports technology to connect people, because we live in a whole different world and age than 1955. We have multimedia platforms. That's where our young people, our youth are. That's a way and a means to connect them. But we also have this group of people that are disabled and older and homebound, and they can't come to our building. So we can use technology to connect them. So this is kind of where we're going with this mission statement. This is where we're using the mission to determine our programming, and then after we know our programming, knowing what our building needs to do to support that. So that's kind of where we are, and trying to get you to think missionally about things. So any questions about that?